Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Salem. And our question tonight has to do with my view and opinions of black magic. And I think that the first thing I would say in answer to this question is that it is necessary to define what we mean by black magic. And I will say that I don't think everyone means exactly the same thing, but generally speaking, black magic is magic that is intended to harm people. Or to cause harmful situations. Usually out of greed, out of selfishness, or out of the idea that the person doing it should be entitled to anything they want, as is described in certain belief systems such as Satanism. In the Wiccan religion, we believe in the Wiccan Rede, do as you will but harm none. And so harmful magic would be considered completely inappropriate. I do want to stress that in the Correllian tradition that I come from, the term harm in the Wiccan Rede must be understood according to its normal meaning. So for example, walking on the grass is not harming the grass in any normal meaning of the term harm, and certainly not in any traditional meaning of the word harm. On the other hand, smacking someone on the head with a rock is harm, and we all pretty much know that. Now, getting back to black magic, I think that the main thing I would say, firstly, people talk about black magic and white magic as if they were two different things. In my opinion, magic is magic. What makes it either white magic or black magic is not the technique used, although I suppose certain techniques really cannot be used for white magic, and probably vice versa as well. But generally speaking, the technique is the same. It's the intentions that are different. And when you're doing magic to harm someone, then it is black magic, and it is not appropriate. Some of the reasons it's not appropriate include, beyond the obvious that it's not the right thing to do, it's the fact that it usually doesn't tend to work out terribly well for people. It often will lead to places you don't expect it to lead. And one of the important things about systems that encourage black magic, such as, again, Satanism, so they don't usually also encourage self-reflection. And in the Wiccan religion, self-reflection is extremely important because we understand that aspects of ourself that we don't necessarily see, such as the shadow, which we've talked about in other vlogs, can seriously warp our magic if we don't work with them. That we must work with these things, heal and transform them in order to be fully whole, and also, therefore, in order to be able to work magic without the risk of internal crossed wires. And people who practice black magic often don't have that same tradition of self-examination, and often therefore will trip over crossed wires. That is to say, they think they want one thing, but internally they're working for something else. The other aspect of black magic that is very dangerous to people, though they don't necessarily perceive it, is karma. The idea that what we do comes back to us. And if we do a lot of harmful things, we're going to get a lot of harmful things back. That isn't to say that if you go out into the world as a good person, only good things will ever happen to you. There are many growth experiences, there are many circumstances that will happen regardless. And you know, nothing is worth doing that's not worth struggling for. I certainly know that with this museum. But if you go out in the world as a bad person doing bad things, often you will find this is mirrored back to you in a lot of ways. And I think that when you're a good person doing good things, that will be mirrored back to you too. Not to say there are never any problems, but you will get a lot of good things back. So for these reasons, I would strongly discourage people from using black magic, particularly from subscribing to systems that encourage it. There are, of course, many things that it's difficult to classify whether they are the right thing to do or not. The classic example comes from Z Budapest, I believe. And it's the idea of whether it is inappropriate to interfere with the free will of someone who is a rapist by binding them not to rape. Is it appropriate to interfere with the free will of someone who wants to be a murderer by preventing them from murder? By traditional standards, we would not consider holding someone back from rape or murder to be a bad thing. We would not consider it to be harm. We'd consider it the prevention of harm. But this isn't, for many people, a difficult call. And generally speaking, if you have any question of whether it's the right thing to do, you probably ought not to do it. Being a witch, being a Wiccan, being really anything in the magical community with a positive moral base does not mean that you don't consider whether you're doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is extremely important, no less so than any other religion. Now there are, of course, again, certain systems, such as Satanism, which do not regard that as important. And I think that, generally speaking, this leads to very bad things. And I would strongly discourage it. But I think that pretty much sums up my point of view on black magic. And I hope it answers your question. And until next time, may you blessed be.